it off in 2009 and then went to establish more than 80 labs across India, Sri Lanka, Nigeria, and has worked closely with doctors, private labs, hospitals, and even with the government. All this has raised him a total of $8 million. With an exit imminent in 2021 and a professional COO appointed from August 2019, Dr. Wasim is working on his next venture, a digital health platform, and he aims to launch it in 2020. So that's what, of course, the world is shifting over. And as what we talk today, it is pre-corona and post-COVID times. I think this is what we are looking for. And Wasim also did not give up his medical practice, I would say, to this day. He uses his extensive medical qualifications, which span both alternative and modern medical degrees, including MRCGP from Royal College London, and he continues to practice preventive and wellness medicine. He's something interesting in his profile. He's a food enthusiast, it doesn't look like, but he tracks food history across the world that he documented in his food blog, Grubbers, and his magazines. So there is a lot more to add into, but the kind of expertise he brings in and the variation that he has in his profile, right from being a physician who are supposed to be very in a different mood, going up to a food blog and then into digitalization. My husband himself is a physician, but I don't see him at all as a digital person. He is just not beyond an email, but that's what you have done. Thank you so much, Dr. Rashmin, for bringing him to this platform and educating. I'm sure there are thousands who gathered together on YouTube Live who may not be here on this panel, of course, but we'll love to see something new which will come in, and I'm sure it is going to change for all of us. So Dr. Rashmin, over to you to actually introduce what's coming in today, and then over to Dr. Wasim. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Monica. And it's a pleasure to be here. Good evening, friends. It's great to be part of this group. I always enjoy discussing with you. And today I have a very close friend of mine. I know him for more than 17 years, Dr. Wasim. He, as Dr. Monica mentioned, he's a great doctor, he's a clinician. But over and above that, he has myriad interests. And some of them, Dr. Monica mentioned, I don't think Wasim has mentioned in his CV, but he's a good musician as well. He was a part of a band in his medical college and he plays guitar, and he tried very hard to teach me guitar, which of course didn't materialize too much. But yeah, today he's here because he has successfully established a company. And while he was, and he's so meticulous that when he was establishing the company and it was very successful, he still wanted to learn the principles and theories behind entrepreneurship. So he has done MBA, and plus he went to MIT Boston, and he did the boot camp on entrepreneurship in MIT, which is one of the, I mean, even to attend the boot camp, there is a very stringent selection criteria. And he passed through it, and then he excelled in the boot camp. He was one of the first few people who were chosen to go forward, and he has also taught in the boot camp. So he's going to apply some of the principles that he learned at MIT, and he's going to teach us as to what is it that one requires if one wants to become an entrepreneur. First, there'll be general principles, then there would be some discussion into how do we apply it to us as to the eye care professionals. And then the third part of the discussion would be how all these principles would add up in a post-COVID era. So without further ado, I hand over the mic to Wasim. Wasim, all yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Monica. That was an extensive introduction, but I'm extremely privileged to be as part of your platform. Dr. Rashmin has spoken at length about it. And when we were talking last time, he just asked, shall we do something with entrepreneurship? You know, something that's very important in today's world. Entrepreneurs are changing the world all over. And one of the most difficult things in entrepreneurship, I think, is the start. Is to understand, to go from 0 to 1. And then it's easier to go from 1 to 2. And then much easier to go from 9 to 10. So some of the things that we were speaking about is how do we start? MIT, which most of you might know, is the world's #1 university, and it has the world's best entrepreneurship program. One of the reasons it has an entrepreneurship program is the person who heads the Sloan School is actually an entrepreneur, somebody who's run businesses, somebody who's raised nearly $1 billion, who also has an MBA, and he brings real world principles. And one of the basic things that they teach us there is an MBA is about how you run a business, and it has nothing to do with what entrepreneurship is. So having or not having an MBA is not a prerequisite to being an entrepreneur, because the principles are extremely different. In fact, they are North Pole and South Pole. And over a period of 10 years, they researched entrepreneurs, because MIT comes out with more than 900 entrepreneurs a year, which is one of the highest among most top universities in the world. They did a lot of work on understanding entrepreneurs and how to teach entrepreneurship. And that's how the entrepreneurship program in MIT became popular. Uh, so today, we'll probably pick one important area of this entrepreneurship, and we'll probably go from there. Shall I share my screen?
Ollie, he'll share his screen if you please permit him to.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see you. Yeah.
Okay, so let me start off with basic principles of entrepreneurship, and then we will then we will take it to healthcare, and more specifically into eye care. And so the way I've structured the discussion for today is pretty much what is the market for the eye? The eye is a large market, and even within healthcare, eye care and all forms of eye care are a large market. Most of you might know this. I'm sure Dr. Rashmin Gandhi will agree that this is an exciting space to be in. With a lot of new technology also coming into this. AI is playing a huge role in eye care. Business discussions are playing a huge role in eye care. Entrepreneurship plays a role in eye care. Even within the healthcare ecosystem, eye is now being looked at as the window to the world, window to the healthcare system itself. Google, in fact, as most of you might know, has recently picked out eye changes as one of the earliest steps to screen diabetes and hypertension way before blood sugar is high. So eye is a large market, and we can look at the size of the market itself, because it's an important point in entrepreneurship is to go after a market that is large enough so that you can succeed. The next pertinent question is, can you succeed in an existing market? Isn't eye already crowded? What concepts do you need to understand to break into an existing market? And we look at 3 examples. Then we'll come to one of the basic concepts of entrepreneurship in MIT, which is called the beachhead market. And then we'll try and understand how to adapt this beachhead market to healthcare. Even excluding eye surgery, just the optics market in India in 2020 is about $140 billion. And it's growing at about 30% CAGR, which is your accumulated growth rate, which means the market is growing at extremely fast-paced speed, which means that it opens up a lot more, and there is not one single person who can address and solve the problems that a $140 billion market poses. And so there's always space for newer issues, for newer solutions, for newer products. And when a market is growing at 30%, which means every 2-3 years, there's going to be something new that comes into the market, and which opens up more opportunities when you decide to enter a market like that. Simple statistics, I believe for every 80,000 population, there's only one optic shop. 50% of a 1.3 billion population needs some form of optics or eye correction. And obviously that opens up a huge market. So let's dive straight into entrepreneurship. What can a watch teach you about entrepreneurship? Is there a watch even? For those of you who are watching this live, you can probably use the chat box. Does that look like a watch? The creator of this, and he doesn't call it the watch, he calls it the timepiece, is a person called Sun, and he was one of the students at MIT's entrepreneurship. Now, when you look at a watch, it's a crowded space. There are millions of brands. There are brands across the spectrum. There are high-end brands. You have the Omegas and the Rolexes, and you have even higher end brands, and you have the fashion brands, and then you have something down to about 200 rupees. Can you create a watch and still succeed when there are millions of such players? And remember, the first thing that one of the first topics that we wanted to address was, how do you enter a market which is already has so many players? So what does this watch solve? In fact, the first question in entrepreneurship that you're supposed to ask and answer for yourself is, what problem are you solving? It's not about what product you built. It's not about what ideas you had. It's not about what team you built. It boils down to what problem are you solving? And in that case, what problem does this watch solve? So there's a little story behind this. Sun's friend at MIT was actually visually impaired. And he always used to keep nagging him and telling and asking him what the time was when he was in his lectures and classes. It was something that used to annoy Sun, because like, this guy is always asking me every 15 minutes what's the time. And so he did what most friends would do. He gifted him a timepiece. He gifted him a watch. What does the watch do? You press a button and it'll tell you the time. Sun's friend tried it once. He pressed it once and the entire class knew that he was looking at the time, because it went loudly and said 1:44 p.m. Needless to say, his friend didn't use the watch after that. So then Sun picked him another watch, one where he opened the watch face and he can touch it and feel it. And what happened? I mean, you can take care of the problem, right? But he realized that every few days, the hands of the watch moved away. Sun said, okay, you know what? The existing solutions are not solving your problem. I'll make you a watch. And so he made a watch. Really, he just made a watch and went and gave it to his friend and said, this is a watch for you. And his friend, his visually challenged friend, asked him a question that stunned Sun. Can any of you guess what that question might have been? Here is Sun presenting a watch saying that I'm making a watch for you. And he just put in something rude, crude, and gave it to him. And his friend just, after he got it, just asked him a question. The question was, does it look good? And Sun wasn't ready for that question. He said, hey, how does it matter to you if the watch looks good or not? You can't even see. And so Sun's friend said, so what? Just because I can't see, I don't deserve to look good? Don't I deserve to have something that looks nice? And that dawned on Sun that none of the watchmakers actually asks the visually challenged people what would solve their problem. Something as simple as wanting to know the time. It's a basic need for all of us. We all keep seeing the clock all the time. We go on to our cell phones all the time. And here is Sun's friend who wanted to know the time. He didn't want the entire room to know that he was looking at he was looking at the time. He didn't want to have the wrong time because the needles were moving away. But more importantly, he wanted something that looked good. So soon went back to the drawing board. And after nearly 6 or 7 months, I believe, of going back and forth on design, they came up with what you see on your screen, what he called the Bradley, named after his friend. But before he designed this watch, he actually went around colleges, not physically, but through emails and questionnaires to understand. His son's friend, the only one who wanted a watch that looked good. But to his surprise, he found that 92% of people whom he had sent the questionnaire to, people who were visually challenged, said that a good looking watch was extremely high on their priority. It was higher than the watch telling the correct time. Soon knew that there was a market. There was an unsolved problem. A visually challenged person having a good looking timepiece without letting the world know that he was looking at the clock, and something that he could feel. And that's how this watch came into being. Look at this. This little magnetic ball here tells the hour. These are all raised, so you can feel it, and a visually challenged person can actually tell where the ball is. And there's another ball here. I don't know how many of you can see it. There's a little tiny little blob here. That's the other part of the magnet. And that's the one that moves around telling you the minutes. So you can actually feel the time. He knew that there was a large market, and he knew that this watch is something that will fancy even people who are not visually challenged. You know what? That's the watch that I'm wearing. That is the watch that I'm wearing. I'm not visually challenged. But he didn't go after a market that solved problems for everybody. He picked a market where he could enter first, where he could conquer that market fully, and then expand from there. Today, this watch, the Bradley, is available on Amazon, is available all over the US. It's a premium timepiece. It's called the Bradley. It's a premium timepiece. But it wasn't made for me, but I'm using it today. So this is the first example of entering a crowded market, is to pick up and understand one area that you want to attack first. What is that called? I'll come to that later. If you come down to it, in our second example, let's look at Indigo Airlines. When Indigo came to the airline business, there were premium airlines like Jet, Kingfisher was already there. Then there were low-cost airlines, extremely low-cost airlines. Deccan was giving you tickets for 1 rupee. How did Indigo survive and win in a very crowded and a very competitive airline industry? What can you give? I want to go from Chennai to Mumbai. I want to go from Chennai to Hyderabad. I take Jet Airways, I go to Hyderabad. I take SpiceJet, I will go to Hyderabad. I take Air Deccan, I will go to Hyderabad. But all of these airlines had differences. But how did Indigo win that space? Today, it is one of India's most valuable companies. They are the most cash-rich airline. They can literally survive COVID. They can survive onslaught. They can survive competition. They can give you low price tickets and eat the competition out, simply because the competition cannot survive with such low price tickets, but Indigo can, simply because they have the cash. But how did they get there? They also picked the markets within the airline industry, within the many of us who want to travel from point A to point B. They picked one market and said, I will get you there on time. That's it. They didn't say I'll make you travel in the most luxurious manner. They didn't say my food in the airplane is the greatest. They picked one market there and said there are business travelers who are fed up of having planes being late all the time. Let's pick that one category of people and let's attack them. Let them come to us first, and then we'll expand our services elsewhere. That market there was on time. Then later they expanded that on time to their company. They said on time salaries, on time maintenance, on time everything. Then they expanded. They said, yeah, better food, this, that, quirky timings. But it all started with that one market, which was people who want to go there on time. Let's look at a last example. And this is about the company that I co-founded, TechMed. When we started TechMed in 2009, there were about 35 labs in the 2-kilometer area around us. How are we going to be different? It's the same blood, the same machine. I can probably make nice looking people sit in front. I could make competitive doctors spend more time, but they were all doing all of that. How do we enter a space that is so crowded again? The answer is to pick that small market within your market. And what did we pick in TechMed? We picked hospitals. When my partner, who founded the company, when he was operating in small hospitals, he realized that thyroid used to take 3 days to come in hospitals. Today, you get it in 4 hours. But when we started off, it used to take 3 days for small hospitals. The Apollos would get it in 4 hours. But if you go to a small hospital, surgeries were delayed because thyroids were not available. And so we said, why are large hospitals able to do it in 4 hours? Because that means the processing time doesn't take 3 days. Then when we spoke to the doctors there, we realized that they all thought that thyroid probably takes 3 days to process. We said, hey, we have a market here. Let's solve the problem for small hospitals. And that's what we did. And between then and 2000, when I left the company in 2019, we were valued significantly higher. We were doing more than 35, 36 crores of turnover per year in TechMed. We had appointed a CEO, and of course now I've moved on, hoping to move to the next venture. But that's what we picked. We picked a market within a market and said, this is what we're going to achieve. Now, we've seen these examples, right? What is common among all of them? That's the word that MIT uses, and it's called the beachhead market. Now, what is the beachhead market? It actually comes from the navies, or the Navy SEAL. Prior to World War II, a lot of what we do today, including our food tins and cans, all of them are innovations during World War. So hopefully even COVID is going to give us opportunities to invent and innovate something that we will use for many, many, many more years. And World War II is when a lot of innovations actually took place. A lot of soldiers had to be fed. Tinned foods actually became extremely popular during that time because you could store them, you didn't need fridges, you could ship them all over the world, and it would work. One of the earliest strategies that they take when they go to conquer a particular area is they used to land their crew, the Navy, the large ships that can land aeroplanes, onto a beach. Once they had the beach covered end to end, they could just move in. And that's how the name beachhead market came into play. A lot of mistakes a lot of entrepreneurs make around the world, and it's not just India, it's around the world, is that who is your customer? Everybody. Whose problem are you solving? Everybody's problem. And when you start doing that, it's very difficult to solve everybody's problem. And therefore, you end up solving nobody's problem fully. The beachhead market ensures, as one of the simplest concepts of entrepreneurship, the beachhead market ensures that you have a market that you have fully conquered. It doesn't mean you need to serve all 100%. If a market has 100 people, and if you're able to serve 10 or 5 or 8 or 10 of them and solve 10 people's problem completely within reason, expanding from the 10th to 11th person, expanding from the 11th to the 20th person, subsequently to 21, 31 to 50 is a lot easier. And when that happens, the spillover starts to happen. And then even people whose problem that who were not your primary targets will start to come, because you would have conquered that market and you would have made mistakes. As entrepreneurs, we all make mistakes. It's important to fail fast, fail cheap, and get up when you fail. And when you attack a very small market, your chances of failing, if you end up failing, happens a lot faster. You will learn a lot quicker to be able to come back. How to choose a beachhead market? Typical size, when we say TAM, what we mean is total addressable market. It means if every single person in that market was to buy your product, what would that size be? It doesn't mean you have to make all of them buy. Now, why is that important? Is if you choose a beachhead market that is too big, it's very difficult to attack. If you pick a beachhead market that's too small, you may not be able to prove your product enough to be able to commercialize it and make it big. So between 100 and 1,000 crores is perfect for a beachhead market size. One of the characteristics of a beachhead market are it should be a closely knit market. The customers should be able to talk to each other, so that the word of mouth, your marketing becomes easy, your communication is streamlined, and you send a consistent message to all of your potential customers. So what was the beachhead market for all of these places? Indigo picked On Time as their beachhead market. Supremely successful. E1 picked visually challenged timepieces for the visually challenged as their beachhead market. Today, everybody uses their watch, including me. At TechMed, we picked hospitals as our beachhead market. The beachhead market concept works everywhere. It works in practice. It essentially means what is your next step. I've used the concept of the beachhead market in my practice in wellness, in quitting smoking, for helping patients quit smoking. The concept of the beachhead market is a lot bigger than what I'm telling you now, but I hope you get the message about why a beachhead market is extremely important, and it's one of the first steps to your entrepreneurial journey, is to ask the question, what problem am I solving? Are there enough people with that particular problem? What do you think can be the beachhead market for optometry, for ophthalmology? Remember, when the market is 140 billion, there will be a lot of beachhead markets. There will be a lot of problems that are not solved. There will be areas that you can attack, and there will be areas that 100 people can attack, because the market is large enough for everybody. So in our discussions, we can talk about potential beachhead markets for optometry. I'm happy to take questions. Surely Dr. Rashmin can guide us through what we look at post-COVID, and this is an area that I've presented a lot at MIT these days. We've done 4 topics about companies in the post-COVID area, and what kind of companies can be expected to succeed. and we can also talk about, surely Dr. Rashmin can guide us about what kind of beachhead markets are available in ophthalmology and optometry, and how you can take that forward. Thank you. I'm open to questions. So.
Yeah, we can open the forum for discussion. Can you stop your screen sharing? Great. Yeah, Monica, ma'am, you can go ahead.
Yeah. In fact, it was all so much engrossed in this, so much thought in it, that the first thing we would like to do is survey around. Okay, I think the best person to initiate this is Ajit Bhardwaj. And thank you, Rajesh sir could join in again. He had some connectivity issue. So I think let's all get initiated on it. All our friends on the YouTube who are observing live, we can read through your chat. Please put in these thoughts. Over to you, Ajit sir and Rajesh Wadhwa. Please lead this discussion. And I think there's so many ideas which we have to talk in today.
Monica, thank you so much. But I feel that Dr. Wasim and Dr. Rashmin have a plan. And I would give it to Dr. Rashmin to lead, because I understand that this presentation is just halfway. It's not a complete one, because we are just left with something. We are looking for some direction, some objective. So I would prefer Dr. Rashmin to come in, and then we can talk on that. Dr. Rashmin, please.
Wasim, so I think you have given a concept and a principle that one has to follow. So let's break it down into more mundane problems. Let's say if I'll ask two questions and let's get straight back. I start practice as an optometrist or as an ophthalmologist. Post-COVID era, my corporate has cut my salaries, and it's not something which will sustain me for a long time. But there are people who have lost their jobs because of lack of income. So I have to enter the market. The question is either I'm entering a market like Hyderabad or Delhi, or I'm going to a smaller place, let's say a town of 5 lakh population. As an optometrist, to establish my practice, let's say I require 1,500 square feet place, and I require a equipment to cost me around 40, 50 lakhs. And I would be targeting people for a general checkup. I would be doing diffraction because that's my specialty.
Oli, could you, we are not able to hear Dr. Rashmin you very well.
Dr. Rashmin, I think
audio is
your
very weak.
voice is a little more unclear for us.
Is there anything you can do?
Yeah, let me check. Is
Yeah.
it better now?
No, we are still the same. We can't get the audio clear.
Okay, let me just give me a minute.
Yeah.
All right, is it better now?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Could you
much better.
repeat, please, part of it, because I was thinking it's me only, but everybody was having the problem.
Yeah, so what I was asking Wasim is that more practical, more mundane application. And I was giving him two scenarios that I want to establish my practice in like Hyderabad or Delhi now, or I want to establish it in a smaller town which has 5 lakhs. And I'm going to this, I require around 50. So one thing he told us is to look at the market. Look at the market. Who are your potential customers and all that. So before that, let's say I don't have money. I have to invest 50 lakhs, but I don't have that money to begin with. So what are the options that I have? How do I get this money in my kitty to start my practice?
Okay, so I don't know if this is a bubble that I'm going to break, but most successful businesses, uh, when they start off, money is just an enabler. And one of the biggest lessons that most of us have to probably take home is that when we started TechMed, and this is a personal example, is that money wasn't there. And that's when, as entrepreneurs, uh, it's important to understand that it's not just your ideas, it's the ability to hustle. So what did we do is that we went and spoke to manufacturers and told them, keep your equipment on rent. In 2009, it wasn't the case. It wasn't very common to have equipments on rent, especially for startups. So the minute you look at that, it brought down our capital requirement from about 75 lakhs to down to about 10 lakhs straight away. So innovation, besides just what you want to do, also boils down to how creatively you can think around finances, how creatively you can think around marketing. So it would come down to, if you need 50 lakhs to set up an optometric practice, is to break that down and say, where is that 50 lakhs going? And what can you get somebody else to partake your journey? As entrepreneurs, we're all salesmen. If I cannot convince my first patient to come, there's no way I'm going to build an empire. If I cannot convince my supplier to invest in me, there's no way I'm going to be able to convince my customer. So how do we bring that down before we actually end up in understanding how do we raise that money? Is to understand what are the bare bones. For optometry, if you need 50 lakhs, what can you get on rent? What can you get on a weekly 2 times rent and combine your patients there? Same thing with marketing. People say, I don't have money to market on Facebook. You don't need money to market on Facebook. Can you give tips on optometry to your set of patients? If you decide that I'm going to go after school children, for example, can you do videos for parents on how to protect the kids' eyes? Because they're all in lockdown now. How can they protect the children's eyes from watching too much TV, for example? And if he starts making videos, small videos like this, he's going to get the word out. And remember, the first thing when parents think of going to somebody, you're going to come to their mind because you entered their hearts already. You told them so much. So suddenly your marketing requirement has gone down to your phone camera, which is not any cost at all. And then you say that I need to have 5 equipments. And you say, okay, now I can get 4 equipments out, or I would outsource that somewhere else. You need only 1 equipment. Suddenly your 50 lakhs will look like 4 lakhs. That's the first step. And once that comes down to 3 or 4 lakhs, then you'll realize that you can manage it. You'll probably get some parents to help, some friends to help. Again, it boils down to the first step. When we needed 75 lakhs, we're like, where do we get 75 lakhs from? But when it came down to about 8 lakhs, we realized that he could get a personal loan for 5 lakhs. Somebody could invest 1 lakh as debt. Somebody could invest 1 lakh as equity. And we were able to raise that. So we need to get one step back and take all the preconceived notions out and say, what do I need? What do I actually need? When we break that down, I think the next steps start to come in. Did I answer the question?
Yes, so I think there are 2 things which came out. One is that you reduce your capital expenditure. There are 2 types of expenditures that you would require to factor in when you start your own work. One is what is called as capital expenditure, which you require right in the beginning to, to make your interiors and to get your equipment and all that. And then the operating expenditure, where you need to pay your staff, or you need to pay the electricity bill, AC bill. So that's the operating expense. So we are talking about the first part, that, okay, we have decided to jump in the market. So this is going to be 2 things. One, people who are waiting to jump and become an entrepreneur. And then we'll go to a second part where people who are already in the market, they're doing the business, how they can expand. So we are on the first one. So
Right.
Capital expenditure, first thing first, if you're not going to invest, if you don't have your own money, and that concept is called bootstrapping, you're going to go as miser as possible to spend money to begin with, and to find out ways. So for us, It's like if you're able to ask company to have the money, have your equipment as a demo for first 2 weeks. If let's say if you're going to have a slit lamp in your clinic, make sure that slit lamp and the chair comes in as a demo to begin with, and then you pay them after a month or two. So you can start your work before without bothered about those 1 or 2 or 5 lakhs. Now the second part, we shrunk whatever we had to. Now we still require money. And you spoke about two principles there, debt and equity. So can you explain, with a lot of people will be probably hearing this for the first time. So what is investment by debt and what is investment by equity?
So simply to break it down, an equity is somebody who's a partner in your business. The business does well, he gets something out of it. The business goes bust, he loses everything. So he's your partner in both good and bad times. So equity is simply somebody who could be a partner, who could invest money in you, saying that when you make profits, you give me something. So there are different ways equity gets structured. Debt, to put it simply, is somebody whose business is money. He's giving you money, immaterial of whether you do well or not, you have to pay him. You have to pay him back the money that you borrowed, and you pay him something for using that money, which we call as interest. Now, debt comes in multiple forms. It comes in interest forms. It comes in what is called as debentures. It comes in payable debentures, long-term debentures. There are many ways you can structure it. But typically, this is what it means. It comes down to this. If you become a millionaire, you still pay him only 10 rupees plus whatever money you borrowed. If nothing comes out of your business, you still pay him the 10 rupees and whatever you borrow. That's debt. Your bank loans are all examples of that. Equity is if somebody believes that, hey, this guy is going to do well, let me give him 1 lakh. And hopefully if he makes, he's putting in 1 lakh. If he makes $1 million, I'll make $500,000. So that it's the simplest form of explaining what an equity and debt is.
Perfect. So just to summarize for us, debt is, in simple terms, is a loan. Now, whether you take it from a bank, you take it from your friends, you take it from your relatives, it's a loan where you have to pay back the principal and then you pay back the interest. And there are ways, again, by which you can reduce the initial payment. There are banks, if your credit score is great, then there are banks who will give you a loan and they'll say that I'm giving you 3 months of moratorium where you don't give me principals for the first 3 months, you only pay me interest, and then you start paying both principal, the capital money and the interest after 3 months. There are banks who give you overdraft facility where for the first year, 2 years or 3 years, you only pay interest, and at the end of 3 years, then you pay back the principal. So in other words, if you're going to borrow the money from the market, a debt is a loan, and equity is where you formed a group or you formed a company, and the guy invests in you, and he then takes profit if you do very well. He takes part of the profit at a pre-decided rate. Is that right, Wasim?
Absolutely. That's the simplest way of putting it.
So that's about getting money. Which one would you prefer? I'm a startup. I've never done any business. This is the first time I'm entering the market. So I know that both have their advantages and disadvantages. But if I give you a choice that no, you need to choose only one, which one would you choose?
It's actually a more scientific answer. I think when you start a business, you would have a plan in mind. You would tell yourself that it's going to take me 3 months before I see 100 patients a day and I'm going to make 1 lakh a month, right? You might have some plan in mind. Or if you're planning to do something like what I'm doing right now, which is a virtual doctor, I know that for the first 18 months, my revenue is not going to come in because it's a long lead time. The answer to your question is the longer the lead time, that is between you starting your business and you think you're going to be making profits, the more you should move towards equity because it will help your cash flows. If you think in 3 months or 4 months you can make your money, you should move towards debt because then you're keeping all the profits for yourself in the future. Nobody's there to share your success because you're the one who's working hard on it. You're the one who's putting, if somebody's investing, he's just putting in money, but you're putting in time, you're putting in your money, you're putting in your knowledge. And as much as possible, equity has to be treated like gold. So if 3 or 4 friends are getting together, each of you are bringing a particular strength, and all 4 of you are putting a little bit of money, it's best that it stays within the 4 of you without any external partners. So the simplest answer there is, if you think that in a 3, 4, 6 months time you can start to break even, debt is better, scientifically better. If you think it's going to take in a lot longer to get your thing, then debt becomes extremely expensive, and you'll realize that because the interest and compounding factors come in, and you'll realize that I borrowed 10 lakhs, but I have to pay back 30 lakhs after 18 months. We don't want that scenario. So, so that's the better way to deal with it, is to understand your cash flow.
Yeah, and in fact, you answered the other question. So I said that whether you would like to sit in Hyderabad or in a crowded market versus a smaller town where there are not many practitioners. And I assume that if you're going to go in a crowded market, your lead time is going to be higher because there are already a lot of players. And so you probably would look at the equity because you might, the break even time, what is called as a break even time. And break even time is where you don't need to infuse any further money. Your project, your business earns for at least its expenses, even if there's no profit. So that time is going to be much longer if you have established players there, if you're starting in a crowded market, versus if you're starting in a smaller market, but where you virtually don't have any competition, you know that your income is going to be faster. And those scenarios in a smaller market, uncrowded market, or where you're assuming that your patient flow is going to be there right from the first initial days, you, if you have to borrow money, borrow debt. So now, first thing is, yes, money requirement. There are different options. Second thing is, you mentioned about it, plan. So how do I make a plan? I want to start a center. What are the things that you look at? You looked at the beachhead market, but what are the stuff that I look at? Put it on paper, saying this is my plan and this is what I'm getting into. What are the facets of making a business plan?
Yeah. So your, the beachhead market is the first step to the plan. You understood what is the problem you're solving. You're an optometrist. You've decided, I'm going to teach parents how to prevent eye problems for their children. For example, that's your beachhead market. You've decided that you want to go after that market. So your plans would then be, what are your expenses in order to make this work, right? So suppose you need 5 people, and your target is, I want to do this for 1,000 parents every month. For example, these are just random numbers, right? So you want to do 1,000 parents, you want to educate every month. How do you get to those 1,000 parents? And that's your marketing expense. Yeah, your marketing, your brand building. So your creativity comes in to understand how much you can reduce that. Like I said, if you make your own YouTube videos, you try and give it all free. Then when people come back to you, that's one area of marketing. You can reach out to ophthalmologists and tell them, hey, your patients have children. I'm doing this for my patients, referrals, right? So that's another way of entering this. So you would look at your marketing expenses and say, to get to 1,000 patients a month, I need to spend so much. And that, in our simplest form, is called cost of customer acquisition. To get a new consumer, to get a new parent into your patient list, you need to spend something, and that's the cost of customer acquisition. So that's a very, very high level example of where your marketing expenses. The second thing would be your fixed costs. Now, fixed costs are expenses that, immaterial of whether patients come or not, you have to spend. So that will come down to your basic rent, your electricity. If you're paying a staff member, whether you have 1 patient or 100 patients, you still have to pay them. So you'll have to put in your fixed costs, all of them together, your rent, electricity, utilities, all of them. Your variable costs, saying if 1 patient comes, I need to spend, let's say, 2 gloves and 1 PPE equipment, 1 whatever, 1 consumable. So those are your variable expenses. So if your target is 1,000 patients, for 1,000 patients, how much are you going to charge? What is your revenue? That will be your first line of your business plan. Then you would say, this is my variable expenses. So if instead of 1,000, if I get 600 patients, I would spend 10 rupees a patient. So my variable cost is 6,000 rupees. Immediately, whether 600 patients come or 1,000 patients come a month, I would still have to spend 15,000 rupees on rent, electricity, whatever. So what is your revenue? What are your expenses, fixed costs? What are your variable costs? And according to your plan, you're saying in first month I will reach 100 patients, and in the 10th month I will reach 1,000 patients, and that's my capacity. 1,000 patients is my capacity. Now, how long does it take you to reach your full capacity? That's your lead period before your company is at scale. So there are two numbers that we look at. One is your break even. Starting in the first month, you say it'll take me 3 months. If I hit 300 patients a month, I will not have to put money from my hand. What I earn will take care of my expenses. From 300, if I reach 1,000 patients a month, then that's my capacity. My business, my center is at scale. So I would make so much. So these become your two target points. How do you go from 0 to the third month to your break-even number of patients? And how do you go from the break-even number of patients to your patients at scale? So this is in nutshell what your business plan is. Of course, there are various aspects of business plans, risks, strength, weakness, all of that. But this is the bare bones of your business plan.
Yeah. So I think what you have told us is that you need to make sure that what you're going to spend, you need to know that right in the beginning, and how long you're going to spend till you say that now I don't need to spend, and at least my business will take care of my expenses. So these are the two most important things. Of course, these are conjectures. Nobody can predict with certainty that this is what is going to happen, and that's the reason why when you are the basic rule is that when you're looking at your expenses, you always go on the higher side. If you know that you're going to get 100 patients on the second month, you assume on your business plan that it will be on the fourth month and not second month. And income, you always go on the lower side. If you say that you're going to earn, for example, 1,000 rupees a day from first week, you bring it down to 100 rupees per day for the first 1 month, so that you always have a buffer, because these are conjectures and they are not really rules. It's difficult to really predict accurately to the last point, even if whatever study that you do. So it's important to make sure that when you look at your projected income and projected expenses, you make sure that you keep buffer on both sides. Is that right, Wasim?
Absolutely. In fact, that's called the value of disappointment. Uh, there's we use a term in MIT called the value of disappointment. If you draw a graph and look at what you think you'll achieve in the short run, we always overestimate. If you say, and you take any number, you say in 1 year I'm going to achieve 1,000 patients, and in 5 years I'll achieve 5,000 patients, is what you might think. But in reality, in 1 year you'll achieve only 300 patients. But in 5 years you'll achieve 10,000 patients.
Yeah.
So that gap between what we think we'll achieve in the short run versus what we actually achieve, and what we think we'll achieve in the long run versus what we actually achieve, is actually very, very different. We tend to overestimate our short run, and we tend to underestimate our long run.
Yeah. And you always need to have a buffer of events that is not under your control. Just give you an example. We started a project in Kenya. We had our capital expenses taken care of. We had budgeted for around 8 months of our operating expense, to say that on a higher side, that by 8 months we'll have enough money to make sure that we'll not spend any extra money to run the center. And what happened, and we had given it an 8-month duration because we knew there was a election in Kenya, and that added 4 more months we added. Now what happened was, election result was null and void, and they actually had to have a second election in Kenya, which happened 4 months after the first election. So not only that all calculations were topsy-turvy, but then there was an addition of 6 months for which we had to budget for. We had to manage the operating expense. So always make sure that you have a buffer for the event which is not under your control.
Yeah. So I think considering some time also, because we had to. So beautiful thoughts. In fact, while this was going on, there were ideas that were floating in. And of course, as it is said that the time is changing in, and we'll have to think of new ideas. And new ideas, he's already given one, child eye health, and educating on child eye health, where we need to bring in, and something to develop on it will be a hit again at this time. So I think, Ajit sir, would you like to bring in some ideas and initiate? And then of course the time is a little more constrained right now.
Monica, I still feel that there is still a lot to come from Rashmin and Wasim. So I would still like to hear more from them, and if they have done, then we would like to, go back to question and answer. Dr. Rashmin, do you have any other insight for us, or we just put on to the question answer?
Yeah, I think you may take it up, Ajit sir,
Okay.
to begin with, and some ideas and how it will transform into the time, and beautiful way of presenting business plans and very encouraging thoughts that he has given.
You
And
see, what intrigues me at this point of time is the last comment from Dr. Rashmin, that you keep a buffer for an event that is not under your control. And that is the real time I think we are facing in businesses. No one expected that we will ever have to face a situation like this in our lifetime. And as always, I say that there is no other profession in healthcare which needs more entrepreneurship as an optometrist profession needs. Reasons: there are no job opportunities. Number two, there are no jobs going to be created in future. At the same time, the government jobs, even if they are existing, they will be again going through a kind of layoff, or not exactly layoff, but there won't be any expansion in the government jobs. Keeping this in mind, every optometrist need to understand what Dr. Wasim has given us an idea about, to look for a vacuum, look for an area where you need to go, look for an area which is not, which could look for a space which is not too crowded. That is number one. He gave an idea how you can keep your expenses less, how you keep a good cash flow, whether you want to invite a debt or whether you want to take a equity into your business, depending upon your calculation, whether you are going to get a gestation period, or we call it break even period, of years or of a shorter time. If you want to establish yourself in a smaller town, what I came to understand is good to have your maybe a kind of loan. But if you feel that it will take you longer, maybe in a crowded city like Delhi or metro, where you will have longer time to get break even your business, then maybe at that particular time you should need to think of equity. Understanding, the time we are going through, the kind of businesses, the kind of business scenario is at the point of time, I feel there's going to be new opportunities for optometry. There are going to be new areas which will open. There are certain, obviously the businesses are down, but I'm sure there are new businesses, like if you see the platform like Zoom, and there are so many other platforms that have come up. There are so many digital health platforms that are coming up. They are doing a very good business. So I feel that if you have a plan, if you have another idea, and which I feel there is a right time to come out with those thoughts. One thing as an entrepreneur I have learned in my life, that we should be scared of making mistakes. We do make mistakes in businesses, and we will do make mistakes, but never feel, you know, bogged down by those mistakes. That's what even Dr. Wasim said, that you should be in a position that if you make a mistake, you should be able to get up and find a new way to overcome that mistake and not make a repeated mistake. We all, as a businesses owners, businesses founders, have experienced this in life, and I see this is a great platform which or the great insight into the businesses. I tell you, this kind of lectures, these kinds of webinar, we pay thousands of rupees. I personally feel that early in my life, I attended lots of seminars and paid maybe 10,000 rupees, 15,000 rupees to get this kind of knowledge, but we just get in an hour. And I feel we are so privileged that Dr. Rashmin and Wasim, the insight they have given us about how an optometrist need to think, ideas and how they need to implement those ideas into businesses is the need of the hour. So I would
Ajit sir,
give,
I think
yeah.
before you end up, we had two questions. We had one from Sunil and the other where they want some idea for a rural optometry clinic. There are just two questions before you just sum it up. So Sunil, even Ollie, you can unmute Sunil, and Sunil, you can take up your question. I can see him on the video. So Ollie, just unmute Sunil Dixit. Yeah. Sunil, over to you for the question.
Hello, good evening. I think it was really very informative session, and we'll try to implement all those tips and tricks. So as a clinical practitioner, I have just two questions to Gandhi sir. One is, most of the patients come with a lot of frustration. So do you have same experience in this pandemic situation, or do you have some key points to how to handle those particular patients? And my second question is, nowadays, suddenly we have seen, as I'm sitting in Ahuja Eye and Dental Institute, we have more than 100 patients in every day in pandemic situation even. So most of the patients comes with a lot of conjunctivitis. And if you look at the conjunctivitis, the symptoms and sign most likely same as we have seen in the previous before this pandemic. And even we have seen few patients with the viral conjunctivitis. So how do we differentiate for those particular patients who can have kind of COVID patients, or if there is any kind of indicator which can be keep, so that we can keep those particular patients in a different wing, so that they cannot spread these infection to our other patients. So I just wanted to your opinion for this particular two questions. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So Sunil, as far as the COVID related eye problems, there a lot of data is coming out of China, and they are coming out with new clinical features that they saw in their series of patients who had coronavirus infection. And as you very rightly said, one of the common infections, common problem with the eye has been red eye and conjunctivitis. Now, clinically, there are hardly any signs which differentiates coronavirus conjunctivitis from the other conjunctivitis. So in these times, you have to be careful and say that treat all conjunctivitis as coronavirus unless proved otherwise. So if you see a patient with a red eye or eye infection, I would suggest that you isolate that patient and maybe do a teleconsultation, as Mr. Ajit had mentioned, rather than have patients sit in your clinic for a longer period of time and then exposing your staff and other patients. Now, obviously, these times, and actually we had done a survey and has been published in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, not only that the patients are troubled, even the clinicians are troubled quite a bit, because these are unprecedented times. I mean, this is almost like a world war. Everything is at a standstill, and businesses are at standstill. There is no money in the market. So these are difficult times, and you will have patients who would have unusual symptoms, eye or otherwise. And obviously our job then as a clinical practitioner is to solve their eye problem, and also they look at us to counsel them a little bit to make sure that they go back with hope and positivity. That's what we employ. And as Mr.
Right.
Ajit,
Thank you, sir.
as Mr. Ajit mentioned, every crisis also brings in opportunity. So we just have to look at the brighter side.
Because actually what's happened, we have 100 patients in every day, then we have more than 20 or maybe 25 patients in with the conjunctivitis, and with the even allergic conjunctivitis. So it is quite difficult to suggest all those patients for the COVID. So we just separate the wings for the all conjunctivitis patients, and we just suggest. So I just wanted any kind of different kind of way what you suggest from your side. So as you said, I think we should take all the patients as a COVID patients and suggest those for the test.
If they have redness, they can go back either home or car, send the picture to you. Take a picture with a mobile and send it to you, so that they are not in the pool with the patients. And then look at the mobile and then you treat them.
Right. And I just wanted to include you, sir. Normally, what we see, the patient comes when they introduce with the optometrist or ophthalmologist. They diagnose for the conjunctivitis or allergic conjunctivitis, or whether he has congestion because of hemorrhage, or so many things are going on. But the patient always went through the system like registration, waiting areas, etc. So if patient is diagnosed at the point of optometrist or ophthalmologist, and he already suffered all those areas, so how do we make sure the patient, we should make place the people in the main entry gate, who can just diagnose the patient if they have conjunctivitis or redness. So we should keep some optometrist kind of people who can diagnose the patient at the entry point.
Not optometrist. So we have two receptions. So right at the first reception, there is a person who has been in healthcare for a long time, not an optometrist, not a receptionist. So he has a questionnaire, and he asks the questions like in the olden days, whether you have traveled 2 months ago, but now travel problem. Do you have fever, cough, and redness? Do you have a redness? How long do you have a redness? If your patient says I have a redness for, you said okay, you wait here. Somebody will look at you here, or send your photograph to a doctor, and he'll give you a teleconsult.
Sunil,
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sunil, I'll coming back to you. You know, we are in a process of formulating certain telehealth guidelines, and coming back to your question that how we can prevent our exposure as a health eye care provider, I would suggest that more and more optometrists and ophthalmologists need to inculcate a kind of telemedicine, kind of telehealth into the system to come out of all the problems, all the roadblocks what you have suggested. If the patients are there and they can send you the picture on your WhatsApp, on your SMS, and if you can get these answer clarity, it will be better that we can isolate, we can keep away from those patients, and that is what we are working on. If you look at the number of lectures, number of webinars we have conducted on telehealth, at least we have done 7, 8 of them. And we are creating certain kind of image to the even suggesting the government to adopt the telemedicine, telehealth as the priority at this particular time, which will keep us safe, keep our patients safe, and hope Ministry of Health and AIOS will look into this aspect more. I mean, getting the input from you that you have 100 patients and out of those you have at least 50, 60 patients with conjunctivitis. It's a serious issue that the COVID infection can spread. So we'll put those guidelines into our recommendation, and hopefully we come out with specific plan on telehealth. Thank you.
Yeah, right, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oli, is there any other question we have?
No, sir. I think we have answered all the questions and nicely answered. If Monica ma'am has to say something.
Is Monica there or?
Monica's battery went off.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So Rajesh, could you just summarize the whole thing and then we can go back?
I strongly feel that this was out of the box thinking and a wonderful talk, which an optometrist never thinks about. And it's opening the windows of the mind, and we can think wider and broader. Thank you so much. And it was really good listening to these concepts, which seem to be so new and so logical. And we never thought about this. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rashmin. I really amazed at you and Dr. Wasim. I was looking at the books of Dr. Wasim in his background, and I really can't imagine being a healthcare provider, being a doctor. He has the book of yoga. He has a book of clinical health. He has a book of by Gurcharan Das by the title Kama, and it amazes me his knowledge on on the particular business models. At the same time, his wide interest on the food and being or how he could have a guitar today and he could sing for us. Maybe next time we will keep that request to him, and we will look forward to. I think there's something which I still feel that we have not yet come to the conclusion that he talked about certain kind of certificate course or something, which if he can put a light on that, I'll be grateful, and we will see that if we can benefit. So if he can announce something or he has something in mind, you can share it with us.
Yeah, so we have around 12 modules on entrepreneurship, these concepts. He introduced only one concept today, which is beachhead marketing, and each module revolves around a particular concept, and then it goes from that concept, it goes into the real life, and from real life to say how do you solve a particular problem in optometry and ophthalmology. So that's the kind of module that we have designed. We also have plans of having people like you, Mr. Ajit, and Dr. Kuldeep, and people who have made it very big, who have been successful, who already done what we are talking in theory, to participate and give a clinical insight. And typically some of these certificate courses also end with a contest where you say that, you know, you bring in your idea, either a research idea, you bring in your plan, a business plan, which is out of the ordinary. And we will try to handhold and say that, can we make sure that your business plan succeeds from the theory point of view, from the concept point of view, and even in certain cases, if feasible, even from the financial point of view. So that's a plan, and I'll share the details with you, and let's see if it can be worked out.
Dr. Wasim, what are the other ideas? Like you said that if somebody has a good business plan and optometrists have some idea, they should contact you. And what is the organization that supports this? Is it your organization or somebody else, or is the your background of MIT? Could you highlight that in detail, please?
So, as part of MIT's ecosystem, people who are willing to contribute to MIT, I'm one of the mentors for MIT students. So when you're talking to Dr. Rashmin Gandhi, he said, why don't we extend that to our own people? You know, you're sitting and mentoring people from America and Germany and everywhere else. Why can't we do that? So Dr. Rashmin is a very successful businessman, and I think we're in a way trying to put both of our expertises together and see if there are people who want to be mentored here in India with specific areas of interest, and optometry is one of them. Surely we should be looking at that. So what happens with mentorship is mentors are not teachers, right? So when somebody comes with an idea and they say, this needs to be tweaked here, this needs to be tuned here, mentors are people who are able to make you see your mistakes, make you see opportunities. And then we put them on to investment bankers, we put them on to our background of investors, try and tweak plans for them, tweak their business plan. So it's just a large spectrum. So at any given point of time, I mentor about 3 or 4 teams based out of MIT and also the New York University in Abu Dhabi. So these are the 2 institutions where I kind of do mentoring work. But there's a lot more that we can do, and Rashmin sir feels that we should do more mentoring work in India. So that's how this started off. So Rashmin sir, I'll let you.
Yeah, so sure, and that's one of the ideas of initiating this dialogue. That if somebody requires, somebody has the idea, somebody wants to even wants a mentoring, we are open to it. But they can contact me, and then both I and Wasim will handhold and see what can be done.
So I think it's a great opportunity for young optometrists, for optometrists who are in business, optometrists who are open-minded, who have some idea. Please contact them directly. You can contact us, and we will connect with them. It will be a great opportunity. It is, I mean, we are just a facilitator. We are not any, a kind of a broker in between. I'll be very frank. We have no financial interest in your idea, but at the same time, looking at the situation of optometry is, you need new ideas, you need new areas of your business expansion, whatever area it could be. Optometry have 10 separate fields. You have sports vision, you have therapeutics. At the same time, you have prosthetics, you have so much of binocular vision, some new idea that public health, what you can address sitting in maybe in Hyderabad, you can address the need of people of Telangana. I mean, there could be many ideas that can come to your idea. Let's be open to this. What they have shared it with us. Share your idea with them, and it's something which I would love to give my ideas and take mentorship from both of you, and it's an opportunity for everyone. Thank you very much, and I would appreciate Oli to put any question if he has. Otherwise, thank you so much, Dr. Rashmin and Dr. Wasim.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So could you have your email ID, contact number, or Dr. Rashmin is the resource for you here in India?
Yeah, we are going to do this together, and we are in the process of actually making a consortium which will be handling this. And till then, they can contact me. And once the consortium is ready, then that will be the point.
So how do they contact you, Dr. Rashmin? Any email, any phone number?
WhatsApp, email. I'll write in a chat.
Yeah, please just do that so that people get certain, those to shorten their, anxiety. They can start bothering you right now. Great. So guys, I think it's a great day for us, and we find new mentor in Rashmin and Dr. Wasim, and everyone should take an opportunity to, to take their, the experience what they have, and I think you shouldn't miss the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ajit. Thank you, Dr. Monica, Rajesh, and everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.